was back in July or August this year when we began to realise that COVID restrictions were not going away anytime soon. That we were starting to get used to the fact we had to sanitise our hands and wash things down and sign in everywhere. That everyone was getting really tired and just exasperated with what COVID was doing to all of us. That somebody said, let's just put up a Christmas tree and say the year's over and start again. I wonder if you felt like that. I wonder if you still feel like that now. COVID has been tough on all of us in different ways, and 2020 has been a hard year. But hooray, we've made it almost to the end of the year. And this is the first Sunday of Advent, the beginning of the church's new liturgical year. And that's a traditional time for us to put up Christmas trees. So right where I'm standing here in the church, by the time you watch this video, we will have our Christmas tree up in the church. And perhaps this weekend you might be putting up your Christmas tree at home as well. So that's a good thing, a great mark that we've made to this wonderful moment. But let's not wish away the year and wish it's all over too soon, like the person who spoke back in July or August wanted to. Instead, let's accept the invitation the church gives us to be reflective. We have the season of Advent as a 4-week lead-up to Christmas. We don't just bung Christmas on. No, we build up to it and prepare our hearts for it. And part of that preparation is rather than just looking forward only, it's also to look back so that we are not doomed to repeat the mistakes of history. We look back to learn from our past. And that's part of the invitation which our scriptures give us tonight. As we hear from the prophet Isaiah, we hear that the people of Israel looking back over how they have been, not just over 1 year, but indeed over decades and centuries. And it's not always good. Often there are just words of lament in the prophetic words, and indeed in the Psalms too, as the people of Israel look back to what had been going on in their lives, in the situation, but also in their own response to it. So today we hear the words, "You were angry with us when we were sinners, God. We had long been rebels against you. We were all like people unclean, all that integrity of ours like filthy clothing." Quite graphic, strong language is used by the prophets to look back and say, yeah, we didn't do things well. Things have been tough. And so as we listen to those words of the prophets, we might feel the same. But let's take up the invitation then to be reflective, not to wish 2020 away too soon, but rather to use this time as we build up towards Christmas to look back and say, how was 2020 for me? Because perhaps there were unexpected blessings this year, and many people did discover that. I think many people rediscovered their families. I remember one man saying, I've had dinner with my wife and kids more times this year than I did in the last 20 years because working from home has created a new family dynamic for many people. Perhaps you've scaled down, perhaps you've gone bushwalking in your local environment, perhaps you holidayed in New South Wales rather than going overseas as you might normally do and discovered beautiful new places. Even Father John, who would normally have gone back to India for his holidays, went up the north coast and said, this is good. So good, he went back for a second week away. These are the wonderful, unexpected blessings. Perhaps you dug deeper in your prayer life and discovered God in whole new ways. I know for myself, I discovered new ways of doing group discussions in church by using Zoom. There's many new possibilities to give thanks for. So let's do that. Let's reflect on what has been a blessing this year. Notice it, hold in our hearts, and give thanks before we wish the year away. But chances are it's been a tough year too. And for all of us, we'll be able to name those things which have been hard. We perhaps lost people we love. Perhaps are not being able to go to their funerals. Perhaps we've lost work. Perhaps some people have even lost businesses. Perhaps we've not been able to see family and friends and people we love. Our lives have been constricted in some ways. And that may have brought negative impacts on our own mental health and other things too. So if that's the case, we need to look back and see, how's it been? And how have I been going? And the invitation the scriptures give us is to be real and to notice those things which are not good. But rather than to look forward in despair and say, this will never change, it's always bad, it'll get worse. Rather, the invitation the scriptures always give us is to look forward with hope. Hope is the great theme of Advent and the great theme of the Advent scriptures. So we hear at the end of that passage in Isaiah we read this weekend, and yet, Lord, you are our Father. We the clay, you the potter, we are all the work of your hands. And then we go on to pray in the psalm, Lord, let us turn to you, let's see your face and we shall be saved. And so we hear words of hope always after words of lament or frustration. So I invite you to do those two things this Advent. Look back and rejoice what has been good and give thanks. And where there have been struggles and pains and losses, be real and name them, but then look forward to the future with hope. Because hope is what God gives us. Hope is what the coming of Jesus into our world brings. That we are not limited. We are not constrained to the past or the patterns of the past or the present. God opens up a new and wonderful future. The life of Jesus and the life of the Spirit within us orients us to a hope of the future, so that we might celebrate Christmas and New Year with great joy.